Carlos Lehder's cellmate taught him how to make $2 billion. His name was Jung. And for 2 years in a federal prison cell, these two men planned the most sophisticated cocaine empire in history. This is the story of the meeting that changed everything. Chapter 1. The New Cellmate. September 15, 1974, 2:30 p.m., Carlos Lehder walked through the gates of Danbury Federal Prison in Connecticut. He was 24 years old, handcuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit, and sentenced to 3 years for stealing cars and transporting them across state lines. Carlos had been arrested in Miami with a stolen Porsche. The judge gave him 3 years. Carlos thought it was the end of his life. He had no idea it was the beginning. Danbury Federal Prison was a low-security facility, mostly white-collar criminals, tax evaders, fraud, embezzlement, but there were also drug smugglers, lots of them. The 1970s drug trade was exploding, and the prisons were filling up with people who'd been caught moving marijuana, cocaine, and heroin. Carlos didn't know any of this when he walked in. He just knew he was going to spend the next 3 years locked in a cage. A guard led Carlos through the prison. Long hallways, metal doors, the smell of industrial cleaner and cigarette smoke. They stopped at cell B47. The guard unlocked the door. "Lehder, this is your home for the next 3 years. You've got a cellmate, Jung. Jung. Try not to kill each other." The door opened, and Carlos saw his cellmate for the first time. Jung was lying on the top bunk, reading a magazine. He was 32 years old, tan, muscular, with long hair and a thick moustache. He looked like a surfer, or a rock star, or both. George glanced down at Carlos. "You the new guy?" Carlos nodded. "Yeah." George went back to his magazine. "Top bunk's mine, bottom bunk's yours. Don't touch my stuff, and we'll be fine." Carlos put his things on the bottom bunk. A blanket, a pillow, a toothbrush. That was it. That was everything Carlos owned in the world. He sat down on the bed and stared at the wall. This was his life now. 3 years in a 6-by-8-foot cell with a stranger. Carlos wanted to cry, but he didn't, because Carlos Lehder had learned a long time ago that crying doesn't solve problems. Action solves problems. So Carlos decided to make the best of it. If you're already hooked by this story, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens in this cell over the next 2 years is going to blow your mind. I promise you've never heard this version of the story before. For the first week, Carlos and George barely spoke. George read his magazines. Carlos stared at the ceiling. They ate meals together in the cafeteria. They walked in the yard together. They slept in the same cell, but they didn't talk. Carlos didn't trust George, and George didn't care about Carlos. They were just two men forced to share a space, nothing more. But on the 8th day, something changed. It was late at night. Carlos couldn't sleep. He was lying on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, thinking about his life. How did he end up here? Stealing cars. That was stupid. That was small time. Carlos had grown up in Colombia. His father was German. His mother was Colombian. Carlos had lived in both countries. He spoke German, Spanish, and English fluently. He was smart. He was ambitious. He was supposed to be somebody, and instead, he was in prison for stealing a Porsche. Pathetic. George's voice came from the top bunk. "You can't sleep either." Carlos was surprised. George hadn't said more than 5 words to him in a week. "No, I can't sleep." "Yeah, first few weeks are the hardest. Your brain keeps telling you this isn't real. But it is. You get used to it eventually." Carlos sat up. "How long have you been here?" 8 months. Got another 16 to go. Then I'm out." "What are you in for?" George laughed. "Marijuana. I was smuggling weed from Mexico to California. Made a lot of money. Got caught. Now I'm here." Carlos was intrigued. "How much money?" George looked down from the top bunk. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "Enough. Millions. Before I got caught, I was making $50,000 a month. Every month. For 3 years. Do the math." Carlos did the math. $50,000 a month for 3 years. That's 1.8 million. Carlos had never met anyone who'd made that kind of money. "How did you do it?" George smiled. "You really want to know?" "Yeah, I really want to know." George climbed down from the top bunk. He sat on Carlos's bunk, and for the next 3 hours, Jung told Carlos Lehder everything. How he'd started small, buying weed in California and selling it in Boston. How he'd realized the real money was in importing from Mexico. How he'd built a network of pilots, drivers, and dealers. How he'd moved thousands of pounds of marijuana across the border every month. How he'd made millions, and how he'd gotten caught because of one stupid mistake. Carlos listened, and as George talked, Carlos realized something. Jung wasn't just a criminal. George was a businessman. He understood logistics. He understood supply chains. He understood risk management. He understood marketing. George had built a multi-million-dollar operation from nothing. And if George could do it with marijuana, Carlos could do it with something better, something more profitable. Cocaine. Smash that like button if you're realizing right now that this conversation is about to change drug history forever, because what Carlos says next is going to blow George's mind. George, you made millions with marijuana, but marijuana is bulky, it's heavy, it smells, it's hard to transport. You need trucks, you need warehouses, you need a lot of infrastructure, and the profit margin isn't that high. You're making maybe $500 per pound, right? George nodded. Yeah, about that. What if I told you there's a product that's 10 times more profitable, 100 times easier to transport, and 1,000 times more in demand? George leaned forward. What product? Cocaine. George had heard of cocaine. In 1974, cocaine was just starting to become popular in the United States. It wasn't mainstream yet. It was mostly used by wealthy people, celebrities, musicians. But George had heard the rumors. Cocaine was expensive. Cocaine was profitable. Cocaine was the future. Carlos, I don't know anything about cocaine. I do. I'm from Colombia. I have family in Medellin. I know people who make cocaine. I know where to get it. I know how to get it across the border. What I don't know is how to distribute it in the United States. But you do. George stared at Carlos. This 24-year-old kid from Colombia, sitting in a federal prison for stealing a car, was proposing a partnership that could make them both richer than they'd ever imagined. Carlos, are you serious? Dead serious. George, you spent 3 years building a marijuana operation. You made millions, but you got caught. Why? Because marijuana is too bulky, too obvious, too risky. Cocaine is different. 1 kilo of cocaine is worth $50,000. You can fit 10 kilos in a suitcase. That's $500,000 in a suitcase, and it doesn't smell. It's not bulky. It's easy to transport. George did the math in his head. If they could move 10 kilos per week, that's $500,000 per week, $2 million per month, $24 million per year. And that was just 10 kilos. What if they could move 100 kilos per week, 1,000? George felt his heart racing. This wasn't just a business opportunity. This was a chance to become one of the richest men in America. Carlos, if we're going to do this, we need a plan, a real plan, not some half-assed idea. A plan that covers every detail: supply, transportation, distribution, money laundering, everything. Carlos smiled. George, we've got 2 years in this cell, nothing but time. Let's build the perfect plan. And for the next 2 years, that's exactly what they did. Chapter 2. The Education. October 1974 to September 1976, 24 months. Carlos Lehder and George Jung spent every day in that cell planning the cocaine empire they would build when they got out. They talked for hours. Every night after lights out, they whispered to each other from their bunks. George taught Carlos everything he knew about smuggling. Carlos taught George everything he knew about Colombia and cocaine. It was the most expensive education either of them had ever received. And it didn't cost them $1. George explained how smuggling worked. Carlos, the hardest part isn't getting the product. The hardest part is moving it across the border without getting caught. With marijuana, I used trucks. I'd load the weed into hidden compartments in trucks and drive it across the Mexican border. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes we got caught. The problem is, trucks are slow. Trucks can be searched. Trucks leave a trail. If we're going to move cocaine, we need something faster, something harder to track. Carlos thought about that. What about planes? George sat up. Planes? Yeah, small planes. Cessnas, Piper Cubs. My family in Colombia. They have connections. There are people who fly coca leaves from the jungle to processing labs. If they can fly coca leaves, they can fly cocaine. And if we can fly cocaine from Colombia to the United States, we skip the border entirely. No trucks, no checkpoints. Just fly over the ocean and land in Florida. George's mind was racing. Carlos, that's genius, but it's expensive. A plane costs money. Fuel costs money. Pilots cost money. We're going to need serious capital to set this up. That's why we start small. When we get out, I go to Colombia. I buy 1 kilo of cocaine. I fly it back to the United States. You distribute it. We make $50,000. We use that $50,000 to buy 2 kilos. We make 100,000. We reinvest. We grow. In 6 months, we'll have enough money to buy a plane. In a year, we'll be moving 100 kilos a month. George loved it. Carlos, you're thinking like a businessman. That's the key. Most drug dealers think like criminals. They want fast money. They take stupid risks. They get caught. But if we think like businessmen, if we build this the right way, we can make billions, and we won't get caught, because we'll be too smart to get caught. Carlos nodded. George, we're not building a drug operation. We're building a company that happens to sell cocaine. For 2 years, they refined the plan. They drew maps. They made lists. They calculated costs. They identified risks. They planned for every possible scenario. What if a shipment gets intercepted? What if a pilot gets arrested? What if a dealer steals money? What if the Colombian suppliers raise prices? They thought of everything. And by September 1976, when George Jung walked out of Danbury Federal Prison, they had a blueprint that would make them both richer than they'd ever dreamed. Subscribe right now if you want to see how this plan actually worked, because the truth is about to come out in the next episode. Chapter 3, The Promise. September 12, 1976, 9 a.m., George Jung walked out of Danbury Federal Prison, a free man. Carlos still had 8 more months to serve. George stood outside the prison gates, breathing the air of freedom, and he thought about Carlos, the kid who'd changed his life, the kid who'd given him the blueprint to a billion-dollar empire. George made a promise to himself. He would wait for Carlos. He would prepare everything. And when Carlos got out in May 1977, they would start. George went back to California. He reconnected with his old marijuana contacts. He told them he was getting into a new business, cocaine. He asked if they were interested. Most of them said yes. George started building the distribution network. He identified dealers in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, New York. He set up safe houses. He established protocols. He was building the infrastructure for an operation that didn't exist yet, but it would exist. As soon as Carlos got out, inside Danbury, Carlos counted the days. 8 months, 7 months, 6 months. Every day, Carlos thought about the plan. He refined it. He improved it. He wrote letters to his family in Colombia, coded letters that looked innocent but contained instructions. I'm thinking about visiting when I get out. Can you introduce me to Uncle Jorge? I heard he's in the farming business. Uncle Jorge didn't exist, but Carlos's family knew what that meant. Carlos was asking them to connect him with cocaine producers. May 3rd, 1970, 9 a.m., Carlos Lehder walked out of Danbury Federal Prison. George Jung was waiting outside. He was leaning against a car, smiling. Carlos saw him and started laughing. You came? Of course I came. We have work to do. They shook hands, and Carlos felt something he'd never felt before. Hope. Not just hope for success. Hope for greatness. Hope for becoming someone who mattered. They drove to an apartment George had rented in New York City. George had prepared everything. He had $10,000 in cash saved from his old marijuana operation. He had a list of dealers ready to buy cocaine. He had safe houses set up. He had a plan. Carlos, I've set everything up on this end. Now it's your turn. Go to Colombia, make the connection, buy 1 kilo, bring it back, and we'll see if this works. Carlos took the $10,000. George, I'll be back in 2 weeks, and when I come back we're going to be rich. Chapter 4. The Beginning. May 15th, 1977. Carlos Lehder landed in Medellin, Colombia. He hadn't been home in 5 years. The city looked different, bigger, more chaotic, more dangerous, but also full of opportunity. Carlos met with his cousin, Miguel. Miguel knew people in the cocaine business. Carlos, you want to buy cocaine? How much? 1 kilo, for now. But if this works, I'll be buying a lot more. Miguel made some calls. 2 days later, Carlos met with a man named Mateo. Mateo ran a small cocaine lab outside Medellin. Your cousin says you want to buy cocaine. 1 kilo, high quality. I'm willing to pay $5,000. Mateo laughed. In Colombia, 1 kilo costs $1,500. You're offering $5,000. Why? Because I want the best quality, and because if this works, I'll be buying 100 kilos a month from you. I'm not a customer, I'm a partner. Mateo stared at Carlos. This 26-year-old kid with American clothes and a confident smile was talking about buying 100 kilos a month. Mateo didn't believe him, but he liked Carlos's confidence. Okay, 1 kilo, $5,000. You'll have it tomorrow. Carlos bought the kilo. He packed it carefully in a suitcase with a false bottom. He flew back to New York. No problems, no searches, no questions. Carlos walked through U.S. Customs with 1 kilo of pure Colombian cocaine in his suitcase, and nobody noticed. When Carlos arrived at George's apartment, he opened the suitcase. George stared at the white brick of cocaine. Carlos, You actually did it. I told you I would. Now let's sell it. George made the calls. Within 48 hours, the kilo was sold. $50,000 profit. Carlos and George split it. $25,000 each. They stared at the cash. In 2 years, they'd gone from 2 prisoners in a cell to 2 businessmen with $25,000 cash. And this was just the beginning. George, how much do you think we can make in a year if we scale this up? George smiled. Carlos, if we do this right, we'll make more money than we can count. Millions, maybe billions. But we need to be smart. We need to stay invisible. We need to build this slowly. Carlos nodded. Agreed. Slow and steady. Let's build an empire the right way. And for the next year, that's what they did. Carlos flew to Colombia, bought cocaine, flew it back. George distributed it. They reinvested every dollar. Within 6 months, they were moving 10 kilos a month. Within a year, they were moving 50. Within 2 years, Carlos Lehder had enough money to buy Norman's Cay. And the rest is history. Hit that subscribe button one more time if this story taught you something about partnerships, planning, and the power of patience. Because Carlos Lehder and George Jung didn't build a billion-dollar empire overnight. They spent 2 years in a prison cell planning every detail. That's the difference between criminals who get caught in a year and criminals who stay free for a decade. 2 men, 1 cell, 2 years, and a plan that changed the world. The meeting between Carlos Lehder and George Jung in Danbury Federal Prison wasn't just luck. It was destiny. 2 minds that perfectly complemented each other. George had the American connections. Carlos had the Colombian supply. Together they created something that had never existed before. An industrialized, efficient, corporate cocaine empire. And it all started with a conversation in a prison cell. George Jung and Carlos Lehder stayed partners for 5 years. From 1977 to 1982, they made hundreds of millions of dollars together. But eventually, like all partnerships built on crime, theirs fell apart. George wanted to stay small. Carlos wanted to go bigger. George wanted to stay invisible. Carlos wanted to be famous. And in the end, their different philosophies destroyed their friendship. But for 5 years, they were unstoppable. The end.